All right, guys, I'm very excited today to welcome to AGB Coaching my good friend Nosa Eguae. This guy, him and I have known each other just a little under a year now, and I had the pleasure of hearing him speak at Judson University. He came to speak to some of our business students, but he had a focus on athletics that was really inspiring to me as a man, as an athlete, as a coach, as a person. And I was just like, man, this guy needs a bigger platform. We got to get him talking to as many people as possible. We've had a chance to venture into a couple things together we're going to talk about, but it's my pleasure to introduce you, Nosa. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, Rick. Anytime. I'm glad to be here and excited to tell my story and excited to hopefully embark some type of knowledge to whoever's listening. So I'm glad you got me.
That's good, man. I think that's a perfect way to start our conversation because that was the one of two taglines that I took away from your conversation back in December, which was, what's your story? So I want you to both tell your story, but also tell us the story behind asking people what their story is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So for me, I guess I'll get into my story first, and then we'll pivot over to the why behind the story. So um, Nosa Eguae, first generation Nigerian American. Parents came to the States in the late '70s, and my dad got the opportunity to study here. Actually moved to Kansas. When he landed in JFK, he had $163 to his name, and he had to pay for his first semester. So he had some money saved up in Nigeria. Had to pay for his first semester at school, and when he got to the States, that's how much money he had. And I like to say that because that's where my family started in this country. And my dad ended up in Kansas, like I just said, and went and got his master's degree. After that, he was able to save up enough money while working in a chicken processing plant to get my mother over here. Mom came January 1, 1980. And, when my mom got here, they started a family. They were married, of course, in Nigeria. Dad came to make a better life for himself and did everything he could to bring my mother over here, too. When they got here and started a family, decided to move to Dallas, Texas. Funny story, my dad actually got more scholarship money for a program in Nebraska, but my mom said, "Hey, I am going to go back to Nigeria if you decide to go to Nebraska." The climate and the weather was just too much for her in Kansas.
Yeah.
So moved to Denton in North Texas, and Dad went to get his PhD from North Texas University, University of North Texas. I'm sorry, and a few years later, they had me in 1991. By the time I came, I feel like my siblings started to get indoctrinated into Americana, and a part of that when you are a big young kid in North Texas is sports, and specifically football. I like to tell a story about growing up in Dallas, Texas, where the youth football coaches recruit at the local pizzeria, like the local CC's Pizza. You got coaches lined up trying to get kids to sign up for football, and that's how my brothers found the game. So by the time that I came around, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to do what they did, and I remember in the third grade, my dad, had a conversation with him to sign me up for football. All my friends were doing it. It was the only thing I wanted to do, and he didn't let me. And I remember him telling me, he says, "I'm not going to let you play football this year. If your grades are good, and if on Saturday mornings you journal and you tell me why I should let you play football, but what comes first is your education, then I'll let you play the next year." And
I love that.
every Saturday, I had to write a paragraph on why I should play football, but why education was more important. And I think it was a repetition of it that he wanted for me to understand what came first. And my dad is an educator. Spent his entire career in higher education at Paul Quinn University, Paul Quinn College. I'm sorry, and you know his, I think for my parents, what it was, and for a lot of immigrant parents that got the chance to come here via, student visas, the focus on education is their is their lifeblood, because they wouldn't be here without it, right?
Right.
So for my dad, I think that, and my mother, that was so critical. Sport was new to them, quite frankly. In terms of football, of course, we play a different type of football in Nigeria, and I think that as much as they thought it was okay for us to play, they still wanted to make sure that we knew what was the most important thing, and that was our education. So fast forward, I get a chance to play football, and I excel at it, and I'm a pretty good student as well. I think school came pretty easy to me, but football was all I wanted to do, and the reason why I went to school was to play football from the time I hit junior high. So by the time I got to high school, got recruited to essentially go to the high school I went to, was able to go there and have a great career. But it wasn't without its adversity. I remember my junior year of high school, on pace to be the defensive player in my district of the year, and I get hurt. And I tell this story because of the serendipitous nature of life, right? And I'll never forget. I get high low. So if you don't know what a high low is, take it on a block, and offensive lineman takes out my leg. And we're playing the worst team in our district. We're beating them by 35 points. It was homecoming. And I remember being like bent back with my knees stuck on below the player. And I remember like feeling my knee getting hyperextended. And I remember telling the offensive lineman, hey, stop, my knee. And, I don't know if it's because they're the worst team in the district or whatever happened may be, but he stopped. I ended up getting a hyperextended knee in the eighth game of the season, but I didn't tear my ACL. And, I often think about that sometimes. What if I did? Recruiting was different back then. Guys weren't committed. I was actually committed at that time to University of Colorado, and ended up decommitting. But, I just think about that. What would have happened if I tore my ACL right there my junior year? What would my life look like? Where would I be? Would I be in Chicago in this, beautiful loft? And would I be living the life that I'm in today? I don't know. But it didn't happen, and I'm thankful for that. So fast forward, senior year goes around, one of the top defensive linemen in the state, and like I said, committed to Colorado, decided to decommit later in my recruiting process. For me, I think that I made a decision to go to Colorado because I saw the university, I saw the mountains, had never been on a flight before I took my visit to the University of Colorado. And I wanted to go to school there, right? But they ended up going 2-8, and I realized I couldn't play football there. So I decided to open up my recruitment, and called a coach that was at Oklahoma State that was recruiting me hard, and he said, "Nosa, I just took a job at Auburn, and I don't want you to hang up. Give me 24 hours. I'm going to call you back because I want you to come to Auburn with me." And the serendipitous nature of that. And for me being a faith-based man, just the divine divinity of that, was that the head coach, Coach Gene Chiswick, recruited me at Iowa State. Tight end coach, was recruiting me at Iowa State with him. Coach Bower, defensive line coach, recruited me early at Ole Miss. O-line coaches at Colorado came to Auburn, right? All these different individuals from different universities all came to Auburn and were recruiting me at the previous schools. Took a visit that weekend, and before I left, I knew it was the place for me. I just had never seen football being taken so seriously the way that I took it, and it was the best decision I made in my life.
Can we talk through that a little bit because okay, so we said one of the great things about what your dad did for you when he said journal every week.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that we try to talk about is adding weight to your want. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say I want pizza and then someone brings you pizza, there was no weight to that want. Right. You don't know how bad you wanted it. Whereas someone says, I want to play football, and dad says, okay, you can, but you have to write a journal every Saturday. That adds a
Mhm.
lot of weight to now you can tell, do I really want this? If you don't want it
Yeah.
so bad, you're not going to do that journal. So then you fast forward and you say, okay, now I'm a Division 1 athlete. I'm getting recruited hard by some of the schools, some of the best schools in the country. And when you got to Auburn, they took football seriously like you took it, which means to me that for you, football had weight to it the entire time. Is that a fair, accurate thing, or would you
Yeah.
say sometimes you were lazy about football, just happened to be talented, or were you always a hard worker that added a lot of weight to the playing football?
Yeah, there was nothing else that mattered to me, quite frankly. I was um, I was meticulous in my approach to the game. There wasn't nothing that I wasn't willing to do to help make myself the best football player possible. And I think I quickly learned that football has a crazy way of creating opportunity for the willing. So what I mean by that is, if you're willing to do the work, of course you got to have some talent, you got to have some skill. But if you're willing to do the work every single day, day after day, there's a repetition about playing football. You're going to create an edge, and with that edge, you then get to do something with it. And I think that for me, I was able to hone in on the fact that I wasn't the craziest, biggest athlete. I was a big athlete in high school, but I wasn't like crazy. And for me, it was just this meticulous approach that I took to the game, and I think it translated really well in my football career.
That's awesome. All right, so we pick up your story at Auburn, and there's a pretty anyone who's a football fan, a college football fan, in general knows that you're a part of a pretty special moment. But I don't want to speed you up. So you get to
Yeah,
Auburn, and they took football as seriously as you did, and
yeah,
go from
yeah. So when I got to Auburn, Auburn was 5-7 the year before. Like I said, new coach comes in, and 2009 we were 8-5. Starting that year, I was second string on the depth chart. Just had a really good summer. Like, you know, a place like Auburn where it's all about competition. You got the best players in the country. The cream rises to the top. And it's the guys that are willing to work. And it's the guys that are willing to be consistent every single day. And with the new coaching staff, there was no loyalty to past players. It was who's showing up today. And the coaches took a liking to me my first year coming in. Was second string, like I said, on the depth chart behind one of the best defensive linemen I've ever seen play the game, Antonio Coleman, and was starting in like our nickel package, starting on special teams. Like they had me out there, and the day before the first game, I broke my foot. Once again, divine with how things ended up, but broke my foot, and cried like a baby that night. It was literally on my way in. My foot was hurting. Didn't know what the issue was, but on my way into the bus to go to the hotel before the game, the day before the game. Got an MRI the day before, and on that Thursday, Friday hits, I get news from the docs that I broke my foot. Put me in a boot, but still let me travel with the team. And it was a crazy experience. I think it was one of the first times in my life where I faced, significant, adversity. I had never been injured like that. Even my knee, the hyperextension, I was back the next week playing.
Mhm.
Um, so it was I think it was like 3 to 4 month, sideline, and got a chance to redshirt that year, which turned out to be a blessing. And don't remember much about that fall outside of just trying to get healthy. And that next year, had a really good spring, really good summer. Didn't was good in my role as a second string player. Was ready to come in and try to help the team win where I could. 3 games into the season, there was a senior that was starting in front of me, and I was able to get the starting job. And I'm a redshirt freshman. We got a quarterback named Cam Newton. We're undefeated going into South Carolina game, which is our first SEC game, our second SEC game at home, first SEC game at home, and I'm starting, and it was, I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. Coach Tracy Rocker called me and said I was going to get the nod this week, and I think it lit a fire in everybody else around it, and I think that was the reason why was nobody's safe. It's going to be the best players on the field. And, that year was great. Of course, we played in some big games, Alabama on the road, Heisman, the Heisman winner as quarterback. I think just seeing a player like Cam, I like to say, like, it's amazing to see greatness. I think greatness, everybody else plays better when you're around greatness. That's how I judge the best players in the world across sport. The Messis of the world, the Cam Newtons of the world, the Michael Jordans of the world, the LeBron James of the world. And I put Cam in that sentence because he was that. I mean, I don't know if there's, and social media wasn't the same back then. But if it was, I don't know if there would ever been a college football player that captivated an entire country the way that Cam did. And he faced incredible odds, with all types of allegations, and he just balled despite it all. And he brought the best out of me. I know that. So that year, of course, we're down by 24 at Alabama, come back and win that game. Go to the SEC championship, we win that game. And then we go to the national championship in Arizona, and we win the national championship. I think, that was an incredible time in my life. And it's just crazy to have success that early, especially with football, because I think that it's hard not to smell the roses, right? And you want to, you're the champion, but, we had a really young team. When our coaches came in, they essentially, the class before us, almost all the players got kicked off the team, which is another subject for another day. So by the time that we had a heavy senior laden team. So by the time my sophomore year comes, I'm a captain. And I don't know if I truly understood what that meant in that time of my life. I think that I thought it just meant I just need to do everything I need to do like I did last year. But now I understand that, yes, leadership is by example, but it's also, there's also a level of intention that needs to be brought along with that. And I don't know if I understood that back then, just didn't have the context. So went 8-5 again that year. It was a pretty, solid year for us as young as we were. Didn't have the year that I wanted to. Was projected to be, a all SEC type guy coming off my freshman year, and just didn't perform that well consistently. Had some spurts, but didn't perform that well consistently. Junior year comes, sophomore year ends with a torn labrum. Play the last maybe 6-7 games with it. Get surgery right after the season. Miss the entire off season with that surgery. Next year, I started on during training camp, third straight on the depth chart. Finished that season. I think starting the last 7 games of the year, but it was a tough hill to climb. So I think what I'm trying to say with the Auburn experience, right? It started at the top, and then slowly we hit the valley. And I will say one thing about the 2012 season, we went 3-9 that year, and I think it leads a lot of my work today. Before that season started, 2 of my teammates were tragically killed due to gun violence. And, I still remember the day like it was yesterday. Ladarius Phillips and Ed Christian were just magnificent human beings. I talked to Ed the day before. And I had some recruits that weekend to host, and I asked them, what do they want to do? Do they want to go to a pool party? Do they want to go to watch Canelo Pacquiao fight, and Pacquiao and Bradley, and they said, hey, I said, hey, fellas, there's gonna be girls at this pool party. You guys want to go? You sure you don't want to? They were like, oh, we'd rather just hang with the guys. And I'll never forget that because, I wasn't there that night, and one thing that I will say about that moment, is that, I think it was the first time I ever saw the effect of trauma on young people. I went to one of my teammates' funerals. The next day was another one of my teammates' funerals, and I couldn't make it. I physically couldn't get out of bed to make it to my second teammate's funeral. There was so much pain associated with that time. And I think that we brought that into the season. There's some other things that happened with coaches and decisions made by administrators, and they weren't, our coaches weren't allowed to be there. We were all there as a team, seeing our teammates lie on the ground, after that incident. It was raw, and it was the first time I think in my life that I felt just um, how life in an instant can change.
Right.
Um,
No, so I'm listening to you, and you said something a few minutes ago that I'm excited to follow up on. Right, you're talking about winning a national championship with Cam Newton, one of the greatest to ever play, and that's got to be one of the highlights of your life. And then you follow up with this heaviness of loss. So I guess what I'm going to do is do my best to try to ask the follow up question for both. Right. So one of the things that we do at AGB is we want people to really fall in love with process more than results. Right. So while I've never won a national championship at the Division I level. That's the highest honor that any college football player team can have. So it's easy for me to say, but for me, it's like how often can you go back to that space? How often can you use the that moment, that awesome moment now? 10 years later, 15 years later, like so how important is that level of elation, that level of accomplishment?
yeah,
And then
yeah.
how do you compare that to how devastating and how long lasting is that moment of trauma and devastation and loss?
Huh. Um, I can't compare the two. Football is a winning championships and all that. In general is incredible within sport, and I think that sport, why people love it so much, right? Why so much investment is being put in, the business of sport is it's the connective tissue of society. I like to always say that. It brings people together more than any religion in the world does.
Hmm.
Um, but it's still just sport, right? We're talking about lives lost. So I can't really compare the two in that regard. But I will say that um, what we went through was real, and it's the reality that um, one day we will all face.
Hmm.
And um, when you're presented with it, um, and it hits your doorstep, I think that you have to, for me at least, it was a moment when I had to, I couldn't let that moment slip without understanding where I was at in my faith journey. And for me, that was the biggest decision I made the next week after that, getting baptized. And I just, for me, like that time of my life will always be very close in that regard, because it was the first time I was presented with something so finite right in front of me,
Hmm.
which our lives are, whether we realize them or not, or whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
Um, so I will say that in regards to the championship, man, it's crazy when you're 19 in the SEC on top of the world. You just, you win the pie eating contest, and all you can get is um, go out there and do it again.
Hmm.
So I wish that I was able to embrace it in the moment more. Um, but it was
Hmm.
really nice. It was really great. The rings are still great to this day. The banners are still incredible to this day. But college football is crazy, especially at that level where you gotta do it again the next year.
Hmm.
You got to go back to work. So I think it taught me a lot about the consistency of hard work, regardless if you're at the top or you're at the bottom.
Hmm.
We work. I tell people all the time, we worked harder in 2012 than we did in 2010. Easy.
Hmm.
Right? We were grinding and we weren't seeing results. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to chop wood and when you're not seeing those results? Because it's easy to
Right.
work when you're winning. But it's not easy. It's not as easy when you're at the bottom. So to finish up, 2013 comes at the end of that season. Coach gets fired. Coach Chisholm gets fired. I tell people this all the time. Coach Chiswick calls a group of us seniors into the office after our AD let us know that he was no longer going to be retained after the season. And 5 of us are in his office. I'll never forget it. He gives us a hug. We're walking out, and he says, "Fellas, you guys are gonna come back next year. You're gonna have a chance to win a championship." And I think for me, what it reminds me of is the trauma. I think he understood there was so many dynamics at play in that 2012 season. Coaches, coach a lot of stuff, but he also understood that the skill level that we had in the room. And it was crazy because that next year, with Coach Malzahn as our head coach, we played in some of the most incredible games in college football history, and we were able to be on the winning side of those games. Kick 6, of course, the Hail Mary at Jordan Hare against University of Georgia, and then we ended up back in the national championship. Unfortunately, in that one, we didn't take that one home. We lost, and got a crazy leadership story in that one as well. But I think that more than anything, I think it just showed me personally that, and I hope it shows, your guests when they listen to this, that, life will give you highs. It will give you incredible highs. Embrace it. Mm-hmm. And life will give you incredible lows, and find a way to continue to move forward because the highs coming again.
That's right. That's right. And that's big. That's big in the AGB mentality. It's all process driven because, some of that is in your control. You've been controlling your own career with hard work since you were a kid. And so you're proud of that, but a lot of that is not in your control, whether you're bent backwards and just spraying an MCL or a foot. A lot of that stuff, it just happens. The coach being fired, and what do you do from there? You just keep going at it. So that's what I'm saying. When I met you, man, your story was so inspiring, and this is relatively, speaking to the other piece, not the most inspiring part about your story, right? So now we're out of college, and we're getting into the pros. That's what everybody wants to do. They want to get to the NFL, and so talk us through that journey, and then life after football.
Yeah, for sure. So got a chance to play, in the NFL. And I like to say that now because I think when I first initially started telling my story about my journey, I went straight to getting cut, trying to figure things out, right? The identity crisis post-sport, which has led a lot of my work, and which is important, and part of my journey. But it took years for me to realize that what I put on a piece of paper when my second grade, third grade teacher asked what I wanted to do when I grew up, I did it. Right. And I think that one of the hardest things about the pivot and the transition from sport and what we like to do at Prolific is we like to remind people what they've accomplished. You got to be able to know your wins if you want to create more. That's right. And when I realized that man, like I am not my cut story. I am the person that made that 90-man roster in Atlanta with the Falcons, right? They chose me. They could have chose a lot of people, right? I was one of the last guys cut, right? I made it past the 75 mark, right? And it was an incredible journey. I had people that believed in me a lot in that regard and helped me, provided incredible resources. O.C. Miura, who I recently got back in touch with, his support during that time. I stayed at his house in Atlanta and trained. His brother was my agent. Just remember back then how impressionable I was and how incredible it was to be living out my childhood dream. And I ended up getting cut, right before the final 53-man roster. And it was crazy. There was a lot of cameras. We were on Hard Knocks. The cameras took a liking to me because of OC and I's relationship. I remember telling, the coach Mike Smith at that time when I got cut, that I knew that guy had a good plan for me. And I appreciated him for the opportunity, and I rode off in the sunset, and I genuinely thought the call was going to come the next day. I thought I for sure played good enough to be on somebody's practice squad. The call never came. So as I was pivoting out, trying to figure out who I was outside of sport, I I started waiting, and then I realized what I'm not going to do is just sit here. And I remember just trying to figure out, okay, what's going to be next for me. And as much and as hard as it was in that season to embrace the loss of sport, to embrace the loss of just who I was as a person, who people saw that I was, the social environment that creates. I was able to pivot powerfully through it, through the help of my sister, through the help of my, through the help of a lot of people that were essential and close to me at that time. And it led to me getting an opportunity to move to Chicago. And ended up deciding to pivot. Got opportunities to play in the CFL and opportunities to play in Arena League at that time, which was really big. And for me, I didn't think that was what I wanted to do. I did not want to play football for $50,000 or $25,000 and put my body on the line. It was a decision that I made, and I was sticking to it. And it led me to Chicago. I get the opportunity to move to Chicago to pursue an opportunity in healthcare in a leadership development type program. And I remember moving up to Chicago. I remember the day that I moved from Texas to Chicago. And a week later, 2 weeks later, when I got the call from my agent that the Oakland Raiders wanted to sign me to a free agent deal, and I kidded with them. I said, man, they could have called me 8 months ago, but they didn't. And then ended up, making the decision to not play football anymore. And that's kind of what led, me to my work today, which I didn't know at that time. But, I remember telling my agent that I was done. Decided to put up I wanted to hang up my cleats, something that I was doing since the age of 7, because, I felt like I wanted to have success in the corporate realm and be an example for others to have success too, that came from similar backgrounds. And that line in the sand moment was pivotal in my life, because at 23, I could have went back and played football, but I decided not to. And I decided not to because I wanted to, I wanted to champion a new version of me, to inspire others. So that's what I did, and that's kind of what led to the work that we're doing at Prolific.
And I'm excited to talk about that very work. That's where you and I are connected in a lot of ways. And I want definitely our listeners to learn about that. But before we do, I got to make this point, Nosa, because it's such a great point that you bring up, right? This idea of the relative nature of our careers, right? So like I've got this plaque behind me. I'm a NAIA, NCCAA All-American at a small college. I have a choice on how I want to look at that. Sometimes when I tell people that, they're like, well, it wasn't D1. You're right. It wasn't. Right. I know a lot of times we do this with pros. There's guys that make the pros. They're in the league, but if they're not getting time, we're saying something about them in a negative way, not focusing on the fact that they're part of their, they made the NFL. So regardless of what their playing status is. So all of us as athletes have a choice to view what we've done and be proud of it. But at the same time, push ourselves to continue to do more. And that it's such a trap that people get into either way. They're afraid to be proud of what they've done because they think that's going to make them somehow complacent, right? Or they don't want to push themselves to acquire more. And it sounds like your career, you did both of those things to the best of your ability all the way to the end.
Yeah, for sure. We're not perfect, right? I think, to your point, as individuals that are type A, a lot of athletes are, right? To parents right now, when your kid is an achiever, right? And that's something that I've been labeled for a very long time. And, I own it. But in the same light, when you're an achiever, when you're type A, when, you're an athlete, you tend to always push the goalpost back.
Right.
You know what I mean by that? You tend to always, all right, I just want to play college football. Oh, no, I got to play in the SEC. Oh, man, I got to make it to the NFL. No, I got to go first round. Oh man, I go in first round. Now I gotta make it. I gotta make it to second contract. Oh, I made it to second contract. I gotta make it to the Hall of Fame. Right? We're always pushing the goalpost back. And as someone that's still trying to figure this out, there's a fine line between embracing the moment and the win, embracing the fact that you are right now where you prayed you would be years ago,
Mm-hmm.
with also understanding that you can aspire for more and you don't want to be complacent. It's a fine line. I mean, I struggle
Right.
with it in business.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever go away, but I think that all we can do is preach and coach to mindfulness. It's something that
Mm.
changed my life. I wish I would have had it more when I was playing sports, but all we really have is the moment, and all we really have is gratitude of the fact that we are where we wanted to be, and as much as we want tomorrow to be better, we don't control that. So I think that pushing the goalpost back is big for athletes, business people, parents. We all want to be the best we can be, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it is tough to embrace the moment sometimes when you think that way.
That's awesome, man. That's exactly it. That's what always get better is. You just always want to improve, but
Mhm.
yet at the same time, it's okay to stop and say, you know what, I've done it the right way. I've worked hard, and just keep those goals moving. But that's a perfect segue to prolific. So what you're gonna so talk to the people about prolific. I don't want to put the words in. I want you to explain it, but I'm excited about this program and what it does for the athlete as they transition.
Yeah, Rick, I think going back to even your first question, right, with like story, the power of story, right, which is one of the things that we focus in on at Prolific. Soft skills um, are going to open up the door for individuals in the future. I think that we're seeing with AI, we're seeing it with the technology that we have access to. You know, People are going to be able to do the hard skill stuff, right? Whether they can learn it however they can. But soft skills, for us, the ability to tell your story, nothing can tie someone and yoke someone to another person like storytelling. Storytelling then leads to relationship cultivation. And what we like to tell about our fellow to our fellows is your life will move at the speed of your relationships.
Oh wow, that's good.
And story is everything. You give me 2 minutes to tell my story, I'll make it 2 minutes, and I'll blow you away. You give me 10 minutes, I'll tell my story in 10 minutes and make you blow. But we all have that power. Some of us just don't recognize it.
Hmm.
We're superheroes living out a a real life version of Batman and Superman.
Hmm.
But some of us don't understand that there's power in our story. And if you don't understand it, what I tell our fellows all the time, if you don't understand that your story is powerful, no one else will. So learn how to share your story in a way where people can say, "Wow, I want to be friends with this guy." So that is the storytelling piece. And I remember when I was cut, when I was living with a girlfriend in Auburn, Alabama, I was trying to figure out who I was going to be for the rest of my life. I think there was always one thing that I knew, and I knew that I had a story to tell.
Mm.
And if there's been anything that I can write home about with my life, that my story has created room for me. And you know, what I think I learned outside of that is that hearing other people's stories can create room for you as well. Right? Being able to hold space for someone to share their story is a powerful way of facilitating connection. So that's something that we focus on at Prolific. I think Prolific, if I had to describe it in a few words, we are a talent agency that focuses on helping former athletes transition from sport and our simple approach. How do we do it? We provide access, development, and agency. We provide access to opportunities. We provide development and coaching for athletes for them to be able to um, not just get an opportunity to walk into the room, but have a seat at the table, and then the agency to have an ecosystem that can guide them to all they want to be. So that's what we do. That's who we are. Our work is focused on the pivot, that powerful pivot that we feel like every individual should be able to do when they're transitioning into something new. And we've been able to put a lot of time, effort, and work in for years, better understanding the makeup of what it looks like to pivot powerfully. And the focus of our work is from a mental wellness perspective. We have a dynamic team that focuses on holistic care. We call it transitional care. And we feel like that if someone is able to show up as their whole self, then they're going to be able to do their best work. And then from there, there are rules of engagement. Um, and one thing that we've understood very well about the corporate realm, the marketplace, um, it doesn't take too kind of people that don't know how to play the game. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of coaches to help individuals at the first rung of the professional ladder, like there is at the top. Executive coaching is $1 billion industry, I like to say, but they don't spend much time helping people get into the room.
That's right.
And coach people when they're there. So
Right.
we spend our time coaching and developing people to get into the room, and then
That's
from
all.
there, our goal is to then let them be their best self when they get there and do what they need to do.
So let me ask you this. Would you say that most of the transitions that you see are coming from high level athletes? Would you say there's a correlation between the high level athletes that have a hard time transitioning out to other athletes? Or would you say that transition is difficult no matter the level because we've identified as athlete for so long that transition has a pivotal moment that Prolific's trying to help for all levels? Or is there a correlation at the talent level?
Yeah, I think across the board, right? And I think defining high level, you mean Division 1, Division 2.
Right.
Okay,
So,
so yeah,
former pros, fringe
from
pros,
professionals. Yeah. No, it's crazy, right? We started doing this work years ago, and 20, let's say 17 to be exact. Focus of our work from 2017 to 2020 really has been on high level Division 1 athletes. We've worked with a handful of professional athletes. I would have said until about a year and a half that was the crux of individuals that needed the most support. Now, what I realize is that's not true. The thing when you start to study about the collegiate athlete experience is that collegiate athletes, no matter the level, miss out on one main thing when it comes to the collegiate experience, and that's the opportunity to be curious. Curiosity is really the what defines the college experience. It's the opportunity to walk into an internship, to go into a business case that's outside of the realm of your hour long class. It's the opportunity to go to a job fair and say, this opportunity and this job is not what I want to do. Internships, at the end of the day, you're not necessarily trying to figure out, do you want to do it? You're trying to figure out, do you not want to do it? So when you look at the athlete experience, no matter the division, there's a lot that athletes can't do because their focus is on sport.
Right.
So for us, what we like to say is we want to provide the ecosystem of support and development. Yes, does the identity crisis look different when you are making $50,000 as a NIL from NIL at a big time Division 1 university, and the day you finish, the day you don't make it to the professional ranks, your income, right, and the opportunity for income goes down significantly. Not only does your income go down significantly, you also don't have opportunity. Is that tough on the psyche? Of course, but I think that it looks different for the Division 3 athlete, but it's still felt. And
Would you give it?
provides
Would
support.
you? I'm sorry. No. So, would you give advice to a young athlete to do athletics now with that end in mind? Or would you give the advice to no, go ahead and go as hard as you can, give everything you can, but be prepared for that pivotal moment when it comes?
Yeah, play sport as long as you can play sport. I fundamentally believe in that. I would not be here if it wasn't for the game of football. If it wasn't for Auburn University. Um, in the same light, right? What I like to share to athletes is that you can do both. That as much as you want to put all your eggs in this one basket, the numbers should tell you that you should that And your experiences should tell you that you don't have to do that. All right. We're talking about athletes that have 18, 15 hours, 12, 13, 12 hours of classes, and they're still able to compete at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
So when the classes finish up, the eligibility finishes up, we ask athletes, you still have those 18 hours. What are you going to dedicate it to?
Mm.
I want to dedicate it to training. Oh, you're going to train for 24 hours?
Right.
And who does that? LeBron James doesn't train for that long. And one of the biggest things that we like to share that opens our athletes' minds is the great ones do both.
Yeah.
LeBron James is a prolific businessman,
Right.
billionaire, not because of what he's done on the sports end, because of what he's done in the boardroom.
Right.
Tom Brady, the same thing. Messi, the same thing. These individuals that we aspire to be are more than athletes. Why aren't you? The question mark, though, is that no one perpetuates that when it comes down to it until it's too late,
Mm.
right? And as much as I think that there are incredible people doing the work within higher education when it comes to the athlete transition, and I try my best to be of support to them as much as I can, the opportunities are limited because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Right.
And when you're pursuing school, when you're pursuing being a high level athlete, when you're pursuing being, an NIL social media superstar, when you're pursuing all these different things, there's not that much time to dedicate to who you want to be outside of the games of football, basketball,
Mm-hmm.
soccer, baseball, cross country, volleyball. So there's not, I used to say that there was conflicting interests, and not saying that there aren't, but more than that, I think that there's a lot on the plates of everybody involved.
Right.
And it's hard, incredibly hard, for athletes to dedicate the time and take advantage of the resources that are available to them while they're on campus. So for us, our focus is to try to help as much as we can while these athletes are on campus, for sure. But we want to be able to have an ecosystem for them to be able to come into when they no longer are on campus and they're off campus and they are graduated and they're looking for what their next opportunity is.
Right. I think a good way to summarize that is that we say this all ends in family life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can go even for LeBron James. At some point, he's going to stop playing basketball, and then the next stage of his life is going to come. And so that's how it ends for every athlete. There's no athlete that plays sports from the beginning until they're no longer here. It's always play and then what else. And so to have that in mind while you're playing is okay, but there's nothing wrong with having a mentality towards everything you do to give it everything you have and to be holistic in your approach, because that's a repeatable skill. If you do that in sport, you can apply it to business. And if you do it in business, you can apply it to family. If you do it in family, you can apply it to learning an instrument. It's constant. And so that's what I love about Prolific and about your energy and what you're trying to do. So I guess one of my last two questions as we wind down is, talk to me about the challenges in getting that done, right? I mean, you're trying to basically infuse a mentality that it's not like you have 50 years of other companies doing this. So talk to us about those challenges and then tell people what they can do to help.
Yeah. There are challenges. I think what I spoke to some earlier, right? There's a lot of competing interests when you're on a college campus and you're pursuing sport, and budgets are tight. We're seeing a mass pivot. I would say, when it comes to what you know college athletic departments have to prioritize, right? They have to prioritize sport and playing at a high level, but they have to prioritize mental health. They have to prioritize NIL. They have to prioritize, academics, and there's some incredible people, still trying to prioritize, the student development and making sure that these individuals are their best selves when they show up outside of the game of whatever. And we want to be of support to that. We're not here to, you know, uh, take someone's title away from them, right? But we understand that budgets are tight, and if individuals that were championing, student athlete development had unlimited budgets, man, I'm sure they would lean in and do just the most incredible work for their current student athletes and former student athletes. But that's not reality. Reality is that the resources are finite. They're doing their best to allocate them well. But when you have the competing interests that you have on campuses across the country, there are a lot of athletes that leave those campuses without taking advantage of those resources.
That's right.
So when they do, we want to be a beacon of light for them. When they realize, I've had the conversations, I've been on the other side of this hundreds of times, Greg, and I've had the conversations with athletes from the highest level of Division One athletics to the professional level, to Division Two and Division Three and NAIA. Athletes that have said to me, I wanted to keep playing and I didn't have an opportunity to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked up and I realized that the neighborhood that I left 4 to 5 years ago, um, that I thought I would never have to come back to, I'm here right now. And I need support. And we like to say a prolific, what leads our work is what breaks our heart. That breaks my heart. And we understand that there's other dynamics at play. Whether it's Division Three, NAIA, where scholarships aren't provided, athletes still want to compete, and they are, and they're leaving those same neighborhoods, thinking that they're going to go to a university, get the opportunity to play, maybe get the opportunity to play professionally, and they're then going to not have to go back to their neighborhood, only to end up back there 4 to 5 years later with debt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That also breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the professional realm and you see that there's a level of ambiguity that exists within the marketplace that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah. Tell them, Nosa. I want you to educate them on this because this is important. Where are these jobs that they don't know exist because they're not sexy, they're not on IG? But how can we help those kids that you're talking about, that you and I share that passion? How can we help them not go back home?
Yeah, there's a level of ambiguity that exists in the marketplace, right? There's job titles, there's Indeed, but there's not a lot of visibility to what opportunities really exist. And when you're navigating that by yourself and you're trying to figure out what's next and you apply and apply and apply, the craziest part about the marketplace that I've realized is that there's no feedback cycle, right? You make a mistake when you're playing Division One football, Division Two football, Division Three football, Division whatever. When you're playing a sport and you do not do something right, there's coaches at every level to coach you up to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you're gonna have to get it right, but there's coaches along the way. When you look into the marketplace and you look at what happens with where things have gone, where it's algorithms, it's job postings on the internet, it's huge job boards with thousands of applicants and robo, applications and all this junk, where the human factor has been taken out of the first rung of the professional ladder. Mm. What happens there is people don't get feedback or coached up to know that they're missing the mark. That's why they haven't been able to get a call back yet. Mm. That the industry that they're looking at an industry like tech has been ravaged with jobs. So the individuals that are looking for jobs now, guess who else is looking for jobs? People with experience. Guess who's going to get the job? The person with experience. Even the jobs that are dedicated for individuals that don't have any experience. Who gets those jobs? The person with the connections. So if you sit at home, you don't have any connections, you're submitting a resume and it doesn't meet the mark, there's no one to tell you that's not good enough.
Right.
And for us at Prolific, at the end of the day, whether we work with athletes, we've worked with non-athletes, we've worked with moms re-entering the workforce, we want to make sure that people have equitable development and coaching. Because if we could provide equitable development and coaching and access, oh man, that's the recipe.
Right.
And unfortunately, I get passionate when I talk about this. There's too many individuals that are willing. There's too many individuals that are willing to do hard work in order for them to be able to provide for themselves and their family that doesn't have access to coaching, access to development, and access to a network. And we exist to provide that.
Yeah. And that goes back to your statement about the speed of your relationships, develops your success. I mean, because without relationships, you don't have a network, and you don't ever realize that those relations, like it is impossible not to communicate. So even when you think that you're being shy or you think that you're just sticking to yourself, you're communicating. So throughout your entire sports journey, every time, like you and I, we're at this podcast now by way of you coming to speak and then developing a relationship, right? I mean, you came up to me, you shook my hand, you looked me in the eye, and you established yourself with some presence and some energy. I hope I was able to do the same. And then before you know it, we have mutual interest, we have relationship. And now you've already connected me with some people. I've tried to connect you with some people. We're helping each other because of that chance meeting. You didn't come to Justin to meet me. I didn't go to work that day to meet you. But because we understand the power of relationships, right? It works. So we're going to partner with you in two ways, and I hope you can feel this. But I want you to tell other people how they can help, because we're going to partner with you from the AGB standpoint, because we're going to work with young kids, right? At 14, 15, 16, try to instill a lot of this understanding of the need of coaching, the need of being holistic now. And then in my role as an athletic director, you know that we're partnering with you guys, and we're so excited about what you're doing with ACI. And so not just waiting until they're done with school, but you're getting involved with them in school now. So what can people do to support Prolific, to help get this thing going?
Yeah, I think from a support perspective, if you have former athletes in your network, athletes that or in your neighborhood or at your church, and having a conversation with them about life and asking them what they're doing now, not from the place of who are you playing at this year, right? I think that unfortunately is a question that you get a ton when people only associate you with athletics. But having conversations with athletes about who they are and what they want to do for the rest of their life, and if that conversation happens and they're trying to figure that out, sending them over to us at Prolific. We have a digital enabled development program that's there for athletes that need it, and we have support in the ecosystem alongside it, and phenomenal people. My team, the team that I get a chance to work on with, they're phenomenal people and people that care a lot about this work. So I would say that. I would say outside of that, follow us on social media. We're telling a lot of stories about what we're doing and the work that we lead, because we want to bring light to it. And we don't want to bring light from this place of, oh my gosh, this is a big problem in sport. Look at it. There is a problem in sport. There's a lot of athletes, unfortunately, that have not been able to transition well post-sport. But more than that, we're bringing a solution. And whether that be our work with ACI, where we're getting a chance to partner with 24 institutions across the state of Illinois, that is funded by an incredible, powerful individual that wants to see athletes realize their fullest potential, and Bob DeMayo and Fiducian Advisors. We want to ensure that we are being nimble in our approach. We are being innovative in our approach to help and to serve. And that's what we like to say at Prolific. We do this work with our hands open. So if we can help in any way, you can find us at prolificinstitute.com. You can find us, of course, on social media at Prolific Institute. So excited to help where we can, and I think that the work that we do, because it's so meaningful, because it's so intentional, I think there's always going to be room for us to be able to impact lives, which is all that matters.
That's awesome, man. We're gonna get all those links here in the episode. And so here, last question, man. I appreciate your time. I wanted to get you out of here by 7. So I appreciate your time. But here's my last question. Okay, we ask every guest this because I am on a mission, Nosa, to normalize insecurity. I don't want anybody tripping about it. I don't want any stigma on that word. So what's next for Nosa? You talked about earlier about how that line moves. What's next for you? What are you insecure about? What are you fighting? What are you trying to do in your life to move forward?
Yeah, I insecure. You know, I'm I'm learning how to lead every single day. And lead myself and lead others. And when it comes to running a business, I've never done it before. And I have a few businesses that I'm learning every single day. And I think like really what's been put on my heart is to figure out ways. I know this is an old school word, but figure out ways to apprentice other under great leaders. And I feel really called to that right now. In spaces that, quite frankly, I don't know if I know all of what goes on in those spaces, but I know that I'm feeling, I'm feeling, I'm feeling that I need to start to step into some of that work. And whether it be imposter syndrome or insecurity, I know when those opportunities come available because I communicate them. They always tend to show up with, I think, the power of us of what we say. If your listeners can remember that your life will always show up in a way that you speak to it. And I'm speaking things into existence in this time frame that, quite frankly, I don't know much about. And I'm interested and I'm excited for what's to come. But at the same time, I know when those insecurities do come because, like you said, we all have them. That I can remember my past wins. And I can remember that there's never been a room that I haven't showed up in and won.
Yeah,
So I'll say that and I'll leave it there.
that's powerful, man. It's inspiring, man. I appreciate your time, man. Go have a great Bible study. Shout out to Sam and the team, man. Tell them I
Thank
said
you,
hello.
man. Yeah, man. Everybody appreciates you, and we can't wait to get these Justin athletes into this program, man. It's going to be an incredibly powerful fall semester with the partnership we have with ACI. So, Rick, man, I want to say, man, before we cut this line off, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate how you lead. I appreciate your willingness to say, I am going to do everything I can for my student athletes. And I know you're busy and I know what's on your plate. And you taking the time out to ensure that your athletes have all the resources they can to be successful does not go unnoticed. So thank you. Thank you for what you stand for. And I'm excited to see what AGB becomes because I know that there's going to be impact on the other side of it. So appreciate you, brother.
That's love, man. Thank you, man. We'll talk soon, okay?